about the number of potatoes I've eaten since then.
Marijuana was widely used in the 19th century for the treatment of asthma. And in the 1970s, we found that marijuana has a bronchodilator effect. It's because of the THC in marijuana. First of all, let's compare and contrast marijuana with the other, even more widely smoked substance in our society, tobacco. The tobacco was used more widely than any other smoked substance, and marijuana is second only to tobacco.
Lucy?
Yes, dear.
Give me a cigarette, will you, hon?
Don't say cigarettes, say Philip Morris.
Oh? Is there any other kind?
Not for you, there isn't. Nothing but the best for Mr. Ricardo.
Thank you. Lucy, you're so good to me.
You see how easy it is to keep a man happy? Why not give your husband a carton of Philip Morris cigarettes?
Smart move. He'll love them for their mildness, their smoothness, and their wonderful good taste. And he'll love you, too, for thinking of him.
That's right. Good night, everybody. And don't forget, call for Philip Morris. Call for Philip.
We know that if you analyze the contents of tobacco and marijuana, they're quite similar. The major difference is that tobacco contains nicotine, not found in marijuana, and marijuana contains THC and about 60 other THC-like substances called cannabinoids, not found in tobacco. But there are a lot of other particulates that are shared in common, and these include carcinogens, such as benzpyrene, the most potent of the carcinogens and considered to be responsible for a large percentage of human cancers. Benzpyrene is found in 50% higher concentration in marijuana smoke than in the smoke from a comparable quantity of tobacco. And this has been shown by 3 separate groups of chemical investigators. So the expectation is that if you smoke marijuana enough and on a regular basis, that you would incur similar risks to smoking tobacco. So what are the major health risks for tobacco? Emphysema, which I prefer to call chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It's the new term. It consists of chronic bronchitis and emphysema. But you could have significant impairment in lung function without emphysema. It could just be due to airways disease, what we call small airways disease. But because we can't separate out the two components of COPD, emphysema, and the airways component, we lump them together. So that's COPD. So now COPD is the 4th leading cause of death in the US and in the world, and will become the 3rd leading cause in 2020. So it's a very important disease. About 120,000 Americans die each year from COPD. Probably the best evidence for separating out, the best method for separating out a COPD patient from someone else is to look at the rate of decline in lung function. I shouldn't say the best, it's probably the most informative. But it's more difficult to do because you have to make measurements every year for a number of years. And so you get a slope of the rate of loss of lung function over time. We did that. We actually measured lung function every year in our marijuana smokers up to 8 years. And we found that the slope of the decline in lung function was almost identical in the marijuana-only smokers compared to the non-smokers, where it was accelerated in the tobacco smokers. So just one other piece of evidence that marijuana is not a risk factor for the development of COPD. I think I'm convinced of that. And the other major health consequence, pulmonary health consequence of tobacco, is lung cancer. Cancer is the 2nd most common cause of death in the US, and lung cancer is the most common form of cancer. And the major risk factor for lung cancer is tobacco smoking. About 160,000 Americans die each year of lung cancer. So the question that came to my mind and that of my colleagues was whether or not there was any evidence that marijuana would at least qualitatively share some of these health risks with those of tobacco. And that was the rationale for initiating our studies back in the 1980s. what is the evidence that marijuana smoking, habitual marijuana smoking, can lead to lung cancer? With respect to the development of lung cancer, we found no evidence of any increased risk of lung cancer occurrence in association with marijuana smoking alone. The marijuana smokers, if anything, had a reduced risk for developing lung cancer. Not a significantly reduced risk, but reduced less than one-fold, so that means reduced. Whereas the tobacco smokers had a markedly increased risk. If those who smoked more than 2 packs a day had a 20-fold increase in the risk. That's 2,000%. Those who smoked from 1 to 2 packs a day had an 8-fold risk. It's 800%. So that contrasts with no risk, no increased risk, or a slightly reduced risk with the marijuana smokers. THC actually has an anti-tumoral effect. And these are studies that were done both in experimental animals and in cell culture systems, and for different kinds of cancer. For lung cancer, breast cancer, thyroid cancer, prostate cancer, gliomas, brain cancer, that the development and growth, or the growth actually of the tumor is suppressed by THC, and metastases are also suppressed. So how can that be? Well, THC impairs protein synthesis, and it's what we call anti-mitogenic or anti-proliferative. You need, so tumor cells don't as readily proliferate in the presence